40. Great Events.
In the first part of the book, Zarathustra was making speeches, or discourses as he called them, in which he preached his new gospel. Then he went through a crisis and used poetry to get out of it and achieve self-surpassing. But in the previous chapter, Poets, we saw him sinking into self-doubt again, and expressing disillusionment with poetry. It doesn't go deep enough, he said, doesn't capture the deepest truth about earthly life. What other options does he have?
There is an isle in the sea, not far from the happy isles of Zarathustra, on which a volcano ever smoketh, of which isle the people, and especially the old women amongst them, say that it is placed as a rock before the gate of the netherworld, but that through the volcano itself the narrow way leadeth downwards, which conducteth to this gate.
First hint, we are going to get more metaphorical. It tells us of an island that is blowing smoke, and the legend says that it is covering the mouth of hell. We are told that it is close to the Happy Isles, where Zarathustra has been dwelling. The Happy Isles are a metaphor for Zarathustra's state of happiness, which tells us that happiness is quite close to the mouth of hell. Now that his happiness is shaken again, is he going to fall into this mouth? Or will he find in it the powers to overcome?
Now about the time that Zarathustra sojourned on the Happy Isles, it happened that a ship anchored at the isle on which standeth the smoking mountain, and the crew went ashore to shoot rabbits. About the noontide hour, however, when the captain and his men were together again, they saw suddenly a man coming towards them through the air, and a voice said distinctly, "It is time. It is the highest time." But when the figure was nearest to them, it flew past quickly, however, like a shadow, in the direction of the volcano. Then did they recognize with the greatest surprise that it was Zarathustra. For they had all seen him before, except the captain himself, and they loved him as the people love, in such wise that love and awe were combined in equal degree. "Behold," said the old helmsman, "there goeth Zarathustra to hell."
Note, the style is changing. We didn't encounter this type of storytelling before. We learned that Zarathustra is popular with the common people, but not with the elites, here represented by the captain of the ship. The ship visited the volcano island, and there they saw an apparition that looked like Zarathustra, and conjectured that he descended to hell.
About the same time that these sailors landed on the Fire Isle, there was a rumor that Zarathustra had disappeared, and when his friends were asked about it, they said that he had gone on board a ship by night, without saying whither he was going. Thus there arose some uneasiness. After 3 days, however, there came the story of the ship's crew in addition to this uneasiness, and then did all the people say that the devil had taken Zarathustra. His disciples laughed, sure enough, at this talk, and one of them said even, "Sooner would I believe that Zarathustra had taken the devil." But at the bottom of their hearts they were all full of anxiety and longing. So their joy was great when, on the 5th day, Zarathustra appeared amongst them.
The story continues, and tells us that Zarathustra disappeared, but then returned after 5 days. The people thought that he did indeed go into hell, but it turns out, as we shall hear, that he went elsewhere.
And this is the account of Zarathustra's interview with the fire dog. "The earth," said he, "hath a skin, and this skin hath diseases. One of these diseases, for example, is called man. And another of these diseases is called the fire dog. Concerning him, men have greatly deceived themselves, and let themselves be deceived. To fathom this mystery did I go o'er the sea, and I have seen the truth naked, verily, barefooted up to the neck."
Turns out that Zarathustra did go on a journey, but not to the volcano island. He visited a different island. Once again, he tells us that man is a disease, something that we need to overcome and surpass. But he is not the only disease. There is also something he calls the fire dog, which humans are deceived by. He went to see this fire dog, and saw it for what it is.
Now do I know how it is concerning the fire dog, and likewise concerning all the spouting and subversive devils, of which not only old women are afraid. Up with thee, fire dog, out of thy depth, cried I, and confess how deep that depth is, whence cometh that which thou snortest up. Thou drinkest copiously at the sea, that doth thine embittered eloquence betray. In sooth, for a dog of the depth, thou takest thy nourishment too much from the surface.
The fire dog drinks from the sea, and then spouts what it drinks. We've seen Zarathustra use the sea to symbolize the chaos of reality, and accusing the poets of not taking their stuff from the deep, but from the shallow water. The fire dog, on the other hand, claims that what it drinks and spouts comes from the deep. But Zarathustra claims that it is just pretension, and it, too, gets its substance from the surface. We don't know yet what this metaphor stands for, except that what he spouts is apparently subversive.
At the most I regard thee as the ventriloquist of the earth, and ever, when I have heard subversive and spouting devils speak, I have found them like thee, embittered, mendacious, and shallow. Ye understand how to roar and obscure with ashes. Ye are the best braggarts, and have sufficiently learned the art of making dregs boil. Where ye are, there must always be dregs at hand, and much that is spongy, hollow, and compressed. It wanteth to have freedom.
The metaphor is beginning to reveal its meaning. The fire dog symbolizes revolutionary thinking, the kind that was very prevalent after the French Revolution and throughout the 19th century, especially the latter part of it. It subverts the old ways of life and spouts slogans of freedom. Like Zarathustra, the revolutionaries claim that they speak in the name of earthly life, and they want to bring heaven on earth. But Zarathustra says that the fire dog is, at most, the ventriloquist of the earth, someone who merely moves the lips of those pretending to be speaking for earthly life. Actually, it stands for nothing but chaos, with no real substance.
Freedom, ye all roar most eagerly, but I have unlearned the belief in great events, when there is much roaring and smoke about them. And believe me, friend Hullabaloo, the greatest events are not our noisiest, but our stillest hours. Not around the inventors of new noise, but around the inventors of new values doth the world revolve. Inaudibly it revolveth.
The true revolutionaries are those who invent new values. They are individualists, so their inventions go unnoticed, but in time, their new values spread and bring real change. The so-called great events, like revolutions and wars, bring only noise, destruction, and chaos, and very little change.
And just own to it. Little had ever taken place when thy noise and smoke passed away. What if a city did become a mummy and a statue lay in the mud? And this do I say also to the o'erthrowers of statues. It is certainly the greatest folly to throw salt into the sea, and statues into the mud. In the mud of your contempt lay the statue, but it is just its law that out of contempt its life and living beauty grow again.
The revolutionaries destroy the old, but bring no real change. They think that by destroying the statues of the old order, they have ushered in a new order. But the old order simply arises back, since they offered nothing to replace it by. The contempt they show it only ends up strengthening it.
With diviner features doth it now arise, seducing by its suffering, and verily it will yet thank you for o'erthrowing it, ye subverters. This counsel, however, do I counsel to kings and churches, and to all that is weak with age or virtue. Let yourselves be o'erthrown, that ye may again come to life, and that virtue may come to you.
The old order doesn't just come back, but it does so more powerful than before. It can now present itself as a victim, fighting against the tyranny of the revolutionaries, and gains sympathy. Zarathustra even goes as far as advising the rulers of his time to allow themselves to be overthrown, because it will only make them stronger and better.
Thus spake I before the fire-dog. Then did he interrupt me sullenly, and asked, "Church, what is that?" "Church," answered I, "that is a kind of state, and indeed the most mendacious. But remain quiet, thou dissembling dog. Thou surely knowest thine own species best. Like thyself the state is a dissembling dog. Like thee doth it like to speak with smoke and roaring, to make believe like thee that it speaketh out of the heart of things. For it seeketh by all means to be the most important creature on earth, the state, and people think it so."
After Zarathustra mentions churches, the fire-dog is triggered. The one thing that all 19th century revolutionaries hated was the church. Those who pretend to speak for the earth believe that they represent an alternative to the church. Zarathustra, however, claims that the church is merely a form of a state, and that the state is very similar to the fire-dog. As he told us in The New Idol, the modern state makes a lot of noise and pretends to be something great, important, and deep, but it actually stands for nothing. Just like the fire-dog.
When I had said this, the fire-dog acted as if mad with envy. "What?" cried he, "the most important creature on earth? And people think it so." And so much vapour and terrible voices came out of his throat that I thought he would choke with vexation and envy. At last he became calmer, and his panting subsided. As soon, however, as he was quiet, I said laughingly, "Thou art angry, fire-dog, so I am in the right about thee."
The fire-dog is triggered again. Revolutionaries don't think that they are serving an idol. Since they believe they represent the truth of the earth, they believe that once they are triumphant, the people will live according to their nature, and that will basically make the state redundant. This is why the fire-dog is angry. It believes to be speaking for freedom, and Zarathustra is telling it that it is merely creating an idol that will impose itself on the people. It pretends that it is against such a thing, but Zarathustra sees through it, and charges that its anger comes from the fact that it knows it to be true.
And that I may also maintain the right, hear the story of another fire-dog. He speaketh actually out of the heart of the earth. Gold doth his breath exhale, and golden rain, so doth his heart desire. What are ashes and smoke and hot dregs to him? Laughter flitteth from him like a variegated cloud. Adverse is he to thy gargling and spewing and grips in the bowels. The gold, however, and the laughter, these doth he take out of the heart of the earth, for that thou mayest know it, the heart of the earth is of gold.
The other fire-dog is, of course, the one that Zarathustra tries to express in his philosophy. While the fire-dog blames the system for making earthly life bad, Zarathustra blames the values that we currently have, values that demonize parts of earthly life. He is trying to show us that if we dig deep, we shall realize that there is gold at the heart of everything, and we can create new values that will make this gold shine. The fire-dog, on the other hand, doesn't dig so deep, and is drawing from the shallow negative emotions, those emotions that humans of today have because their values have been twisted, to turn them against the system. That is why revolutions that try to change the system are pointless, and will not bring more happiness. Instead, you should focus on changing yourself, drawing from your good inner powers to reshape yourself as a happier being.
When the fire-dog heard this, he could no longer endure to listen to me. Abashed did he draw in his tail, said "bow-wow" in a cowed voice, and crept down into his cave. Thus told Zarathustra. His disciples, however, hardly listened to him, so great was their eagerness to tell him about the sailors, the rabbits, and the flying man.
Zarathustra believes that what he offers us can defeat revolutionary thinking. But his disciples hardly listen to his message. They want to tell him about the apparition.
"What am I to think of it?" said Zarathustra. "Am I indeed a ghost? But it may have been my shadow. Ye have surely heard something of the Wanderer and his shadow."
This alludes to The Wanderer and His Shadow, one of Nietzsche's earlier books, published in 1880. This is when he started to blaze his individual path, and he spoke of himself as a wanderer, traveling unexplored paths and seeking knowledge. The book opens with his shadow suddenly speaking, which startles him at first, but he is glad that he finally has someone to talk to. Their conversation reveals a fear that people will mistake his shadow for him. That is, that his insights will shed new light upon things and will bring new knowledge. But this light, as lights do, will also cast a shadow, and people will mistakenly believe that this shadow is the knowledge he is offering. Something like that seems to be happening here. Instead of listening to his parable about the fire dog, his listeners are more interested in what his shadow did.
One thing, however, is certain. I must keep a tighter hold of it, otherwise it will spoil my reputation. And once more Zarathustra shook his head and wondered. What am I to think of it? Said he once more. Why did the ghost cry, It is time, it is the highest time? For what is it then, the highest time? Thus spake Zarathustra.
If it is indeed Zarathustra's shadow, it is also expressing his subconscious. Zarathustra isn't quite aware of it yet, but apparently he feels that the time has come for another self-surpassing. This chapter marks yet another stylistic transition in the book. From here on, it will be filled with visions, dreams, and premonitions, expressing the subconscious. With that, he will try to go deeper than he could with his speeches and poems. What is the meaning of the vision he presented in this chapter? Well, I believe he is expressing a fear. There is a similarity between the fire dog that he visited and the volcano that his shadow visited. They both spout fire and make a lot of noise. He is afraid that his followers will confuse between him and his shadow. What he is offering is a revolutionary philosophy, but the message of this chapter is that the revolution should not be taken to the political realm, should not involve changing the system. His fear is that his followers will misunderstand his message, will take his ideas to the political realm, and will follow his shadow into hell. Considering that one of the first movements to adopt his ideas were the Nazis, who twisted them into a grotesque and evil abomination, his fear was definitely warranted.